guys, this is Jenna with Hill Valley Farm, and we wanted to do some sort of a series about Goats 101. So you want to get some goats, but you really don't know what you need to be successful at their health and maintenance and care. And so Kaden and I wanted to do something about, Goat 101. So let's go ahead and get started. So there's a few things right at first that you just have to have when you bring your goats home. One of those really important things is a really good fence. And so fencing, it comes in all shapes and sizes. There's so many options out there. And so I just wanted to tell you guys what we have here at Hill Valley Farm and what I always recommend to folks who come to us, starting out with goats. First of all, this is a 4-foot. You can get 5. We have 5-foot over at our yard. But this is a 4-foot no-climb horse fencing. The interesting thing about this is it's a 2x4 rectangle. It's a 2x4 rectangle. And the most important thing about this fence is it is woven, not welded. Woven means because our lovely sweet little goats love to rub on this fence, and when they rub on the fence bends. And so when it is woven, these little woven areas will move and give, versus welded where it's actually every single point at the rectangle is a little bitty weld. Well, that weld is not going to hold up after it's been rained on and tons of sun and all the weather that we get. And then a goat comes along and decides to rub along the fence and bend the fence. It's not going to move with the goat like the woven wire will. Now, something that's also important, obviously, you have to have bracing. These wooden fence posts that are bracing for this gate that we're standing next to right now. And you don't have to do the X for bracing with the wire bracing, but it does really help and it holds up. We had this fence built in 2016 and it is still going strong, and it's the best fence. It's a better fence than what we had built recently, and because the people that did it knew exactly what they were doing. Now, if you come down here, you can also have T-posts. And so I do recommend T-posts. It's a much, for the length of your fence. As you can see, we have T-posts everywhere. It's just better. It's not better. It's more economical that way. If you want to do your entire fence with wooden posts, or you have plenty of trees that you can cut down, that actually they tend to be wonderful fence posts. But just also make sure that, okay, I have a 4-foot fence. That doesn't mean I have a 4-foot T-post. You're going to want at least a 5 or 6 foot T-post, because you want that T-post to be out of the ground a little bit, okay? So now we're going to go over to look at the buck fencing, what we have done over here. And it's a lot different from what our normal fencing is, but I wanted it to be super strong, super stiff, and super reinforced. So we'll go over here and show you guys what I'm talking about. Okay, so over here at the buck field, when we designed our fence, we really didn't have bucks in mind. It wasn't that we weren't open to them, it just, we didn't know, right? So when you look at this field right here, it's literally an L. And so what we did, we just wanted to fence off from an existing fence to an existing fence. And so it was just literally a straight line, all we had to add for the fencing for the bucks. And so what I chose to do is something called cattle panels. I went to my mentor. When we talk about fencing, talk to your mentor. Fencing may be different in your area, but my mentor highly suggested the 2x4 woven, but also cattle panels. And it looks very rigged, but it works. Zip tied to T-posts. Now, here's the thing. Once I got my cattle panel up, the bucks could put, and so could the does, put their heads through these big squares of the cattle panel. And you can see it's really super stiff. And cattle panel is like, I want to say 16 feet long. It's really, really long. So it'll get you a lot of distance in just one panel. So what I did was I reinforced the cattle panel with some more 2x4 fencing. Now, I don't know if my cameraman can look at this. This is what welded wire looks like. So it's just, you see, it's different. It's not woven, it's welded onto each little section right here. And so I had welded wire from a previous thing that we had done with chickens, and so I didn't want it to go to waste, and I didn't feel like woven wire was necessary because I had the cattle panel. You know, this is super stiff. I'm only making sure the does and the bucks can't put their heads out, and there can't be any like fence breeding, because it does happen. So I chose to just do the welded wire for that. Nothing has popped yet. I've had the the welded wire against the cattle panel for a few years now, and I've not had to do anything different. I do come through, obviously, ever so often and look at my zip ties. I make sure everything looks good. I make sure nothing is loose or tucked away from it. And it works. And so that is how our buck pen looks like. We obviously have trees in our field, and so the trees are not poisonous to the goats at all. It's that the goats will kill the trees because they love to eat bark and anything on a tree. So we did use that welded wire to wrap around the trees with some T-posts, and it works too. So, goats are notorious. Apparently they love to climb and they love to escape and all that. We are very fortunate. We don't have those goats that like to escape, or fortunately we've never had one so far that has wanted to jump over their buck field. Or buck fencing. It does happen, but we have fortunately not had any that wanted to do that or felt like they needed to. But fencing is so important. We do go all the way to the ground, because when next month comes and we have little bitty babies running around, I don't want those babies getting under the fence and going somewhere where they don't need to be, or out in the open where there could be a predator coming by, and nothing is out there to protect them. So we do go all the way down to the ground with our fencing. So that's fencing. So just like with fencing, a super, super important thing for goats is shelter. So shelters can come in all different sizes, shapes, and forms. Just like fencing, you have all the options. Maybe you've moved to a farm or a homestead with a barn already on the homestead. That would be amazing, because barns are very expensive to build. If they weren't, believe me, I would have a couple more. But this barn is actually my childhood barn. It's the barn that I have known since I was 5 years old. So I'm very fortunate to come back on the family farm and have our goats on the family farm. This barn is probably right at 100 years old. If not 100, it's a little less. It is an old tobacco barn. And so if you know anything about barns, tobacco barns are meant to have a lot of ventilation, because they hang the tobacco from the beams ahead and above, and then they want the ventilation going through because it dried out the tobacco leaves that way. Now, so obviously we have a humongous hallway, and we have then areas off of the hallway. So to my right is our hay, where we have our hay. It's where I milk. It's where we keep the feed. And so that is over there. To the right of that, like beyond it, is where the kid area is. That's actually where the bucks are right now, because it has officially turned winter in East Tennessee, and it has been super, super cold. So, and we're actually going through a deep freeze right now, and we are not used to this in Tennessee. I'm just going to say that. So we have the bucks over there, but typically it's what we call the kid area. So, and then to my left are where our does stay. And so I'm going to go in here into the stall here. These were horse stalls when I was growing up. We had horses, and we did do some stuff with some cattle, but we mainly had cattle and horses. So no goats were here when I was growing up. In the stall, you will see like a big, huge doorway, but also outside of the stall are these slats, and the slats are open. Now, it is cold. You know, sometimes it's windy, and people are like, oh, you need to completely wrap that up and close it up. You do need to block the wind. Your goats need to be out of the wind. That is for sure. But you can't block up your entire barn. And the reason is because goats are low to the ground, especially the Nigerians, and they pee a lot. And so if they are low to the ground and they're peeing ammonia. You know, there's an ammonia smell. And so that actually closed up can do more harm in their lungs and respiratory tract than good. And then if so you want it to be blocking the wind, but you don't want it to be blocking the wind too much, if you get what I'm saying. So it's very like a fine line. And so I do really pay attention to what the goats are around, exposed to. You know, I've been known to get on my knees in their stall to make sure it's not wet. This is why we use the deep bedding method right now, and we use straw. It keeps them dry. And so also, with that said, in their living quarters, you know, they come in here at night, we lock them up at night. During the day, they can come to and fro. And so obviously those girls right there are chowing out at our new hay feeder that we built for them in the corner. And then we have another hay feeder over here. Then if my cameraman will follow me, I know it's dark in here, hopefully you can see. So where the cameraman is right now, he's in a stall and I am in the other stall. A lot of times we have a door here we will close, and that'll be a separation. A lot of times when we're doing that, it's separating milkers from non-milkers, you know, things like that. Right now it's just open all the time because everyone is bred and there's no one in milk, and it doesn't really matter because we're just all one big happy family eating the same food, you know. And so we have another hay feeder behind this door, and we have another hay feeder over there. And so we really try to, you know, spread out the hay feeders, spread the love. And again, you know, we have more slats. This is obviously open, and so yes, wind can come through here, but the does are down here. And so, you know, this is blocking the wind, you know, and so it is, like I said, a fine line. So we'll go back out to the hallway here. And so again, they're at their hay feeder. Obviously, would I love to put some barn doors in, some really great big barn doors, and, you know, close off the big hallway at night? Absolutely. It's in the plans. It's just not happened. So this is a very, you know, it's a primitive barn. It is what it is. There are, you know, very nice barns out there, and some of them are built exactly for dairy goats. We just don't have that. We have had to, you know, change it as we have gone, and that's okay. You know, it is what it is. Now, the barn itself is very sturdy. It's made of all barn wood. If you know anything about barn wood, it is very hard. So you can't just come in here with a camera and some screws that came with the camera and screw it into the barn wood. That does not happen. You have to use really good hard screws when you're screwing into barn wood or even working with barn wood. I would like to show you guys the kid area. So, well, it's gonna come in. No. So in here, we have the door going into the kid area, and goats do not like steps. So we built a ramp. So there's a ramp that he is going down. And so this is a very small area, but it's very efficient. And so you can come down the ramp, and there's a pin here, there's a pin here, and there's a pin here. So on this side are 3 pins, and on that side over there are 2 pins. They're very small, but they don't need to be big, because what we're doing in here is we either have mother and babies and they bond in here for 5 days to a week, whatever, and they can still go out to pasture because this is a safe space for them. Or it can be when the kids are weaning or older, and they can be in here. Now, we have a board out right here. Typically, it's closed off, but right now, because we have the bucks in here, and if we had the kids in here, we would have this off so they can go to and fro between 2 pens. It makes it bigger. That gives them 2 options of hay feeders. And we also have our heated bucket hanging right here. I know you can't see it, but every pen has a place where a bucket of water can hang, and every pen has a place for hay. And then obviously right there are the minerals, so they can have free choice minerals anytime they want. And so any of these that you see, I know it might be a little dirty, but we can hang our heat lamps. Now, I don't like heated lamps. If I can get away from it, I don't use them at all. Like right now, I mean, our adults are fine. We are not using heated lamps. But when it's kidding season and it's cold, we limit it, but we have to use them. Now, the ones that I like are from Premier One. They're the Prima lamps, and they're a lot more safer. And I say safer. They're not completely safe. So it's just use your judgment in your own barn. But in here, you will notice the slats are a little bit closer together. And that's on purpose because the kids, we're trying to keep the kids warm. It can still breathe, but down below we have the lower slats blocked by something outside. And that way air can still get in and be ventilated, but the wind is not hitting them down below. And then, of course, obviously we have a doorway. It's a top and bottom door, so it can close. We can close the door on the bottom if we want to keep the top open. But typically, we open both of them. Right here, when it's springtime and really nice out and we want a nice breeze, we can open this door. Obviously, we don't open the bottom one because this is not fenced in. But this is nice to have open during the daytime to get, again, more ventilation in here. And so now we'll go to the other part of the barn. Okay, so another thing that you want to think about when you have goats is your hay and your hay supply and where you store it and what that looks like. So our hay is always in the dry. Very, very important. You do not want hay that looks black or moldy or even like highly dusty, like in a very bad moldy way. And so we keep hay in the dry. Yes, there's a big area right here and there, and yes, rain can blow in, but because it's so ventilated, it will also dry out quickly. And so we store our hay on this end and also the other end. And so we have alfalfa over there and orchard grass here. We feed orchard grass year round, all the time. We would love to switch to mixed grass, but our girls are very picky and spoiled. And so it's very hard to get them to go back and forth, and it's not worth it to me. And so I just buy really good orchard grass hay. And then, of course, when they're in milk, we love to feed them alfalfa. That is very, very important. High in calcium. Now, some people will feed alfalfa year round, and that's fine. If they don't need the calcium, they just pee it out. It's not a big deal. But when they're not in milk, I don't have a reason to feed them alfalfa, so I choose to just feed orchard grass. I do try to get the best orchard grass I can get my hands on. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but no matter what, it is not moldy. Very important. Mold can cause something in a goat called listeriosis. It can be like goat polio. It's very neurological, and it kills goats. So we are very, very funny and very careful about getting non-moldy hay, but also non-moldy straw, for their bedding, because they nibble on the straw. It's their bedding. They're goats. They're going to test things out and nibble. The last thing I want is getting a nibble of like some moldy straw or moldy hay. So we don't want that. So hay is so important to the goats. The goats have to have hay 24/7. So no matter what kind of hay you choose to feed your goats, they have to have access to that 24/7 because it is so important for their rumen. Their rumen has to keep moving constantly. And so they have to have hay, and hay is just really, really good. Now this time of year, it's really great. You will see that your goats will drink more and eat more hay because that creates metabolism. And their rumen is literally their furnace, and that is what keeps them warm. So hay is just a very, very important source of that animal's nutrition. And so do not leave hay out when you're thinking about getting your goats. And you can't just be like, oh, you know what, I'm about to run out of hay. My hay guy's going to cut next month. They'll just have to eat grass. No, they have to have hay all the time. I cannot stress that enough. So that's hay. Another very, very important thing, it's just one of those have-to things when you're thinking about goats and getting goats, is having a way for them to have access to water, fresh, clean water, 24/7, just like hay. And so when we first got the goats, we didn't have water at the barn. Yes, we carried the water buckets to the barn every single day, but then I think it was in 2019, we ran a beautiful line of water to the barn, and we've had water at the barn ever since. Fortunately, this year, unlike our standpipe last year and the year before, it has not frozen. This is a new standpipe that we placed this summer, and it has not frozen, and it was 6 degrees this morning, so it was so cold, but it is not frozen. It's done really, really well. So obviously, when it is 6 degrees outside, we can't keep water from freezing in a regular bucket like this. So therefore, we have a heated bucket. If my cameraman will pan over to the heated bucket, there's a heated bucket over there, and there's another one outside of the middle stall. And so during the night, they always have the heated bucket. Now, when I say heated bucket, it doesn't heat the water up. It only keeps it from freezing. So once the temperatures drop below 32, if that bucket is plugged in, which they do stay plugged in 24/7 during the winter here, it will start to activate the coils inside of it, and it will maintain a temperature that is just above freezing so that that water does not freeze. And so it's super important because, again, it's like I said earlier when we were talking about hay, between the water and them drinking a lot of water and eating the hay, that creates heat in that rumen, and that is basically their furnace when they're trying to keep warm. So having fresh, clean water daily is a must. Now here we have Nigerians, so therefore our buckets are not the big, huge 4 or 5 gallon buckets. We use the 2 gallon buckets because frankly my back hurts and I cannot be carrying around a huge bucket of water, and they're little. So like when there's little kids running around, I feel a little bit better about it being just a 2 gallon bucket of water. So we have them everywhere. We place them outside the barnyard, inside the barn. I mean, we have buckets of water literally everywhere. But the thing that helps us do the things that we need to do with the water is this beautiful contraption right here that I can just simply pull up a handle and it fill a bucket for me. It is a beautiful thing. So if you have water at your barn, you're very fortunate because not all of us have always had water at our barn. Now, when it is super cold at night, we have buckets in our house that we will bring hot water to the goats, and we'll actually offer it to them. They really like that treat. I don't do this all throughout winter. I only do it when it's like, 6 degrees outside, low 20s into the teens. And we just always have to make sure that they have a good heated bucket. We do have more does now than we've ever had before, and so I think I'm going to invest next year in a larger, you can buy bigger heated buckets, and so I will be investing in that. But when you talk about goats, to recap, you want really good fencing, and it needs to be good in that the babies can't escape and go through, the fencing. It needs to be a woven wire, not a welded, and unless you're doing cattle panel like I did for the bucks. It can be T-posts, but you'll also need some wooden fence posts for your bracing, for your gates. you have to have a really good shelter, and the shelter has to be, you know, blocking them from the wind. It really should not be like an open face barn, because wind can come from any direction depending on what the weather's doing, right? So it needs to be able to block them from the wind. They need a really good source of hay, whether it's mixed grass hay, orchard, whatever it is. There are peanut, alfalfa, there's Timothy, all kinds of hays out there. Orchard is just what we have here available to us, and we really like it, and the goats really like it, but it has to be clean and it has to be good, and by that I mean not moldy. And then good ventilation in your shelter, but also you need to always have available 24/7 water, fresh, clean water for the goats. So that is going to be part 1 of our Goats 101. What you need, you know, so you want goats. Well, what next? What do you have to have? And so that is going to be part 1. We will go into part 2 with some other things very soon. But that we just wanted to do something with you guys concerning Goats 101. Just because, you know, a lot of times people really don't know what to get. They don't know what is best, and really what works for me may not work for you, or your barn may be different. You may have to do different things, and that's okay. It's just, you know, we have to just be mindful of what species we have, what they like to do. They're not cattle and or horses. They're smaller, you know, and so you just kind of keep that stuff in mind. So thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. And until we see you guys again, I hope you have an awesome goat field day.